We're back with Tom Begich, and we're talking about education. Let's talk for a second about Kivalina. This is a landmark decision.
Absolutely. The Casale case, when it was passed some years ago, was because for 20 years the state had not been fair in how it allocated school construction dollars. The court actually called it arbitrary and ordered the state to enter into a consent decree, enter into a solution to this problem that would require a mechanism that would be non-arbitrary. So back in 2010, they passed a bill that created a mechanism that built off the bonding of urban areas to allow a certain amount of money to go into a fund to support rural school construction as well. That was good. But the other thing that the state ordered was that the court ordered was that the state reconstitute the Public Lands Trust, which the state had totally spent and totally gotten rid of. The state realized back then that this was a critical situation. That was hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to reconstitute that trust.
It's a big money.
So they sat down with us, who had filed the lawsuit, and said, can we come to an agreement? We did. And in that agreement, we identified there were 5 schools already on the list for construction. There's a list that you have to go down.
Right.
The last of those 5 schools is Kivalina, that were on that list. And we pointed out that there was this fund that had been created by law that could now manage to fund rural schools in the future. These were critical pieces of maintaining fairness and equity in education in both urban and rural areas. Now we're down to the last school.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Mm-hmm.
There are a school of thought that says, well, if these folks want to go to school, why don't they just pop on down to Anchorage and go to school there? And I want to interject for those people at home who are thinking that right now, that the reason Anchorage has a lot of money to build schools is because they get it from the state of Alaska. And the state of Alaska gets that money from Bush, Alaska, where all those resources are. So we've actually been stealing money from the Bush because honestly, that's their resource, 1,000 miles away from Anchorage, and they're not getting the benefit from that.
That's absolutely
like we are.
Right. That's one part of the equation. The other part is if you have a job in Anchorage and you work at Costco or you work at anywhere that is serving rural Alaska, the last thing you want is those villages to go away. See, Anchorage isn't just a headquarters for the industry, for oil and resource industry, which does employ people, but not that many. More people are employed in the service sector in Anchorage than anything else. And who do they serve? They serve rural Alaska. So it's a balance between the two. Also, it'd be like me saying to you, it's time for you to move, Dorene, and
pack it up,
and things are changing for you. But they won a court case. The Alaska faced a court case for fairness and equity back in the 70s called the Molly Hooch decision. Mm-hmm. That decision is what's led to the construction of schools in rural Alaska. So that if you actually don't have access to a road or the money to fly to a school in an in an urban area, you would have the opportunity for an education at home. It has transformed rural Alaska.
Built over 100 schools.
We didn't just build those schools, which were built by Anchorage companies for the most part. Mm-hmm. It also transformed the educational outcomes for kids. Less than my age, less than 50% of the men who are rural Alaskan residents have a high school diploma because they didn't have a school, and less than 48% or 52% of the women. That's a huge factor. Now everyone has that opportunity, and I think that's fair. We're looking at the Kivalina case in particular now. Back in 2010, the legislature, or 2011, when the consent decree between the state and us was decided in Kivalina, the legislature decided in the Casale lawsuit, the legislature said to Kivalina, you can't build a new school where you want to in your town because it's eroding. Mm-hmm. So we're going to fund you. That was the last commitment they made. We're going to fund you to build a new school on a new site. Now they're saying, hey, wait a minute, why is there a new site? Why is it costing so much money? Well, it's costing so much money because that's the cost of construction in rural Alaska. Oh, but there's only this many kids that are going there. That's irrelevant. What's relevant is we made a commitment. And that commitment was based on 20 years and more of absolute misappropriation of funds.
A deal's a deal.
A deal is a deal. And to be honest, the Senate Finance Committee is dealing with this issue right now, and they're doing a good job of researching it, trying to understand it in its full comprehension, of all the different ramifications. We understand the tough situation the state's in. The Northwest Arctic Borough understands it. We're all working together to try to come up with a solution that gets us that school built in a timely manner so those kids have an opportunity for decent education before it's too late. But it doesn't end there. We have to continue building the schools as schools deteriorate. That's our constitutional obligation. That's what the courts have found. Whether you live in urban Alaska or rural Alaska, you can't have a school that's 50 years old like Mountain View Elementary and hope that kids are going to be in a good learning environment in that school. Likewise, you can't place people in a school that's overcrowded and underfunded, falling apart at the boiler seams in rural Alaska, and not expect to have some kind of equitable funding resource there. So we're hopeful that this session is going to fund the beginning of that Kivalina school. It's going to continue to fulfill the commitment of Kasaili, and that in the long run we'll still have urban and rural schools being built in this state so our kids get an opportunity to be educated.
Well, let's speak up for the rural schools right now. I got to give plug to Seldovia Sea Otters, who won their first state championship in basketball
Congratulations.
ever. There's only 20 kids on the team. Every single kid gets to play.
I love that.
And they knocked out the good guys, you know.
I love that. That's good stuff.
Because real kids, they can rock it.
They can.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dorene.
Stick with us. We'll be right back after this commercial break.